Before we begin, a quick and important disclaimer. The information provided in this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute legal, financial, or psychological advice. Relationships and domestic legal matters are highly complex and vary significantly by jurisdiction and individual circumstances. The trends discussed are based on historical data and sociological observations. Viewers are strongly encouraged to conduct their own due diligence and consult with qualified professionals, such as family law attorneys or licensed therapists, before making significant life decisions. For decades, we were told that the American dream was built on a foundation of a white picket fence and a marriage that lasted until the very end. But look around. That foundation isn't just cracking. It is being intentionally dismantled. Right now, in the United States, we are witnessing a demographic shift so profound that it is being dubbed the Great Uncoupling. For the first time in modern history, the stigma of the failed marriage is being replaced by the concept of the strategic exit. We are seeing a massive surge in what experts call gray divorce among the baby boomer generation, while simultaneously younger generations are treating marriage not as a permanent bond, but as a renewable contract. If you think this is just about people falling out of love, you are missing the much larger, much more calculated picture. This is about a fundamental reorganization of American wealth, parenting, and personal identity. By the end of this deep dive, you will understand the hidden economic drivers, the psychological shifts, and the cold hard data that explain why divorce now is becoming the definitive trend of our decade. This is about more than just ending a relationship. It is about the new American reality of self-actualization over institutional stability. To truly grasp why the divorce now trend is exploding, we first have to deconstruct the greatest lie in American sociology: the 50% divorce rate. You have heard it 1,000 times. Every second marriage is destined to fail. However, if we look at the historical trends and the actual data from the U.S. Census Bureau, the reality is far more nuanced and frankly more revealing of our current crisis. The divorce rate peaked in the late 1970s and early 1980s following the widespread adoption of no-fault divorce laws. Before this legal shift, one party had to prove wrongdoing, adultery, cruelty, or abandonment. When the law changed to allow for irreconcilable differences, the floodgates opened. But what we are seeing today isn't a continuation of that peak. It is a bifurcation of the American population. While overall divorce rates for younger couples have actually stabilized or slightly declined because they are marrying later and more selectively, a different demographic is driving the current trend into the stratosphere. We have to talk about the silver tsunami. This is the phenomenon of couples over the age of 50 ending marriages that have lasted 30, 40, or even 50 years. According to the Pew Research Center, the divorce rate for adults aged 50 and older has roughly doubled since the 1990s. For those over 65, it has tripled. This is a massive departure from historical norms where older couples were expected to stay together for the sake of the family legacy or financial security. But why now? The answer lies in the intersection of increased life expectancy and the evolution of the individual. In the 1950s, if you were 55 and unhappy, you might stay because you only expected to live another 10 or 15 years. Today, a 55-year-old can reasonably expect to live another 30 active years. That is a lifetime in itself. The prospect of spending 3 decades in a state of quiet desperation is no longer an acceptable trade-off for the sake of appearances. Furthermore, the economic landscape for women has fundamentally altered the math of the American household. Historical trends show that as women's participation in the labor force increased, the necessity of marriage for survival decreased. In modern demographics, the rise of the female breadwinner, or the dual-income household, means that the financial barrier to exit has been lowered. We are observing case studies across various socioeconomic brackets where women, who now hold more undergraduate and graduate degrees than men in the U.S., are the primary initiators of divorce in nearly 70% of cases. This isn't just a social shift. It is an economic liberation that has removed the safety net that once kept dysfunctional marriages intact. When a spouse is no longer financially dependent on the other, the marriage must stand on the merit of emotional fulfillment alone. If that fulfillment is missing, the modern demographic chooses the exit. This brings us to the psychological shift from the companionate marriage to the individualized marriage. In the past, marriage was a cornerstone institution. You built your life around it. Today, marriage is an ornate capstone. You achieve your education, you establish your career, you find your self-identity, and then, if it fits, you add a partner. But because the individual is the priority, the moment the marriage interferes with personal growth or happiness, It is viewed as an obsolete system. We are moving away from the era of endurance. We are now in the era of optimization. Modern Americans are applying the same logic to their marriages that they apply to their careers. If there is no room for advancement or if the culture is toxic, you pivot. Consider the impact of the digital age on these demographic shifts. Social media and dating apps have created a permanent state of perceived optionality. In a historical context, your social circle was limited to your physical community. If your marriage was struggling, your options for a different life were theoretical at best. Today, the grass is greener syndrome is fueled by a constant stream of curated lives on screen. The potential outcomes of a new life are visible every time someone scrolls through their feed. This has created a low-friction environment for the divorce now trend. It isn't just that people are unhappier. It is that they are more aware of the alternatives. This awareness, combined with a decreasing social stigma, has created a perfect storm. We are seeing the rise of the divorce party, the divorce registry, and a multi-billion-dollar industry designed to celebrate the transition into a new life. We must also examine the legal and tax implications that are driving these decisions. The way the U.S. tax code and Social Security benefits are structured can sometimes create a scenario where staying married is a financial liability, especially for high-net-worth individuals or those approaching retirement. For instance, the marriage penalty in certain tax brackets or the way assets are calculated for long-term care and Medicaid eligibility can make a strategic divorce a viable financial move to protect family assets. These aren't cases of couples hating each other. These are cases of couples navigating a complex bureaucratic system to ensure their survival in an increasingly expensive world. As we peel back the layers of this trend, we see that the divorce now movement is not a sign of social decay, as some critics claim. Instead, it is a reflection of a society that is recalibrating its values. We are prioritizing mental health, individual autonomy, and authentic living over the maintenance of an image. But this recalibration comes with massive consequences for the housing market, the way we raise children, and the way wealth is transferred between generations. In this masterclass, we are going to look at the step-by-step breakdown of how this trend is reshaping the American economy and what it means for your future. Whether you are married, single, or somewhere in between, we are moving past the surface-level gossip and diving into the structural reality of the modern American family. The old rules are dead, and the new ones are being written in the family courts of every state across the country. This is the reality of modern U.S. demographics, and it is time we analyzed it with the depth it deserves. To understand the 2026 landscape of the divorce now trend, we have to look at the cohort that was supposed to save marriage, the Millennials. Imagine Sarah, a 34-year-old marketing executive in Austin, Texas. Sarah married Michael in 2019. They did everything by the book. They cohabitated for 3 years, shared a dog, and waited until they were both established in their careers before signing a marriage license. In previous generations, Sarah and Michael would be the demographic least likely to divorce. They are educated, high-earning, and married later in life. But in 2026, Sarah represents a new demographic shift, known as the millennial pivot. For Sarah, the decision to divorce Michael isn't about a catastrophic event like infidelity. It is a calculated assessment of her next 40 years. The millennial pivot is driven by the concept of the sunk cost fallacy. Unlike their parents, who often viewed a 20-year marriage as a success regardless of its quality, Sarah's generation views time as the ultimate currency. If the partnership is no longer yielding a return on emotional or personal growth, they see staying as a waste of future resources. In Sarah's case, she realized that her and Michael's goals had diverged during the remote work era. They spent 3 years working 10 feet away from each other in a 2-bedroom condo, and the friction of constant proximity exposed fundamental differences in their lifestyle trajectories. In 2026, the data shows that remote work has acted as a professional accelerator for some, but a relational decelerator for many others. The lack of external stimulation and the blurring of professional and personal boundaries have forced couples to confront issues that were previously masked by the 40-hour work week and separate social lives. Historical trends suggest that economic stability usually bolsters marriage rates, but the 2026 economy has introduced a paradoxical variable: the housing market anchor. We are seeing thousands of couples like Sarah and Michael who actually decided to divorce in 2024 or 2025, but remained living under the same roof because neither could afford to buy out the other's equity or qualify for a new mortgage at current rates. This has created a demographic of the functional divorcee. They are legally separated or emotionally finished, but physically trapped. When the market shifts, as we are seeing in certain U.S. regions now, the sudden ability to liquidate the family home triggers a surge in divorce filings. It is a backlog of domestic dissolution. This isn't a sudden spike in unhappiness. It is the clearing of a demographic queue that was held back by the reality of 6% interest rates and low inventory. Now let's pivot to the other end of the spectrum, the silver tsunami, through the lens of a character named Robert. Robert is 67, living in Scottsdale, Arizona. He retired in 2024 after a long career in civil engineering. His wife, Linda, retired shortly after. For 40 years, their marriage was held together by the scaffolding of work, children, and community obligations. Once the children moved to other states and the daily structure of the office vanished, Robert and Linda found themselves looking at a stranger across the breakfast table. In 2026, Robert's story is a case study in the demographic shift toward self-actualization in the third act of life. Robert represents the demographic that has the most to lose and, paradoxically, the most to gain from a divorce now approach. The economic stakes for gray divorce are astronomical. We are talking about the division of 401ks, pensions, and Social Security benefits that were calculated based on a two-person household. However, the potential outcomes of staying in a lifeless marriage are now viewed by Robert's peers as a greater risk than the financial hit. Historical trends from the Social Security Administration show that more women over 65 are entering the workforce or relying on their own earned benefits, which has given women like Linda the agency to leave. For Robert, the divorce represents a total liquidation of the life he built, but in the 2026 social climate, he sees it as the only way to experience a genuine connection before his health declines. The shift we are seeing is also heavily influenced by the democratization of legal information. In 2026, the rise of AI-driven legal tech has stripped away the mystery and some of the fear surrounding the divorce process. Imagine a couple who can now use a platform to run thousands of simulations on their asset division, child support, and tax implications before they ever step into an attorney's office. This has led to the rise of the collaborative divorce. This is a demographic that is bypassing the high-conflict, high-cost courtroom battles of the 1990s in favor of mediated, data-driven settlements. This trend is particularly prevalent in tech hubs and urban centers, where the population is more comfortable with algorithmic decision-making. They aren't just getting divorced, they are optimizing their exits. But we cannot ignore the role of the digital echo chamber. In 2026, the average American is exposed to a constant stream of content that destigmatizes and even glamorizes the fresh start. Whether it is through specialized social media feeds or the rise of the divorce influencer, the narrative has shifted from one of failure to one of courage. This is a powerful psychological driver. When a person in a struggling marriage sees a case study of someone in their exact demographic thriving post-divorce, the mental barrier to leaving drops. The social cost of divorce in the US has reached an all-time low, while the perceived cost of staying has reached an all-time high. To wrap your head around the sheer scale of this, imagine if the entire population of a mid-sized state decided to change their legal status within a 5-year window. That is the demographic shift we are currently navigating. It is affecting everything from how developers design apartments, shifting toward more one-bedroom and luxury studio units, to how financial planners are restructuring retirement models. The two-income, two-parent 30-year mortgage household is no longer the undisputed anchor of the U.S. economy. It is being replaced by a more fluid, more individualistic, and more volatile demographic reality. Every step of this process, from the initial calculation made by people like Sarah in Austin to the late-life pivot made by Robert in Scottsdale, is backed by a shift in how we value individual time over institutional loyalty. We are seeing a movement where the marriage certificate is being treated less like a sacred vow and more like a service-level agreement. If the provider fails to meet the emotional, physical, or developmental needs of the user, the contract is terminated. It is the consumerization of the American family. As we continue this deep dive, we have to ask the most uncomfortable question of all. What happens to the wealth? We are currently in the middle of the largest intergenerational wealth transfer in history, and the divorce now trend is acting as a massive disruptor to that flow. If the family home is sold and the retirement accounts are split, the inheritance that the next generation was counting on starts to evaporate. In the next part, we are going to look at the cold, hard numbers of the divorce economy. We will examine how the legal system is struggling to keep up with these new demographic realities, and why your current financial strategy might be completely vulnerable to the trends we have just discussed. If you think your assets are protected by traditional logic, you are looking at a map of a world that no longer exists. We are moving into the mechanics of the split, And the reality is more complex than a simple 50-50 division. Don't go anywhere, because the economic impact of what we are about to discuss will change the way you look at your bank account forever. The myth of the clean break is perhaps the most expensive delusion in the modern American landscape. Most people entering the divorce now cycle in 2026 imagine a simple mathematical equation where you take the total value of the life you built, divide it by 2, and walk away with your half. But the American legal system does not operate on a playground rulebook. Depending on which of the 50 states you call home, the financial reality of your split will be governed by either community property laws or equitable distribution. To understand how this decimates wealth, we need to look at the story of David, a 42-year-old software architect living in Charlotte, North Carolina. In 2026, David finds himself in an equitable distribution state. Unlike community property states like California or Texas, where assets acquired during the marriage are generally split 50-50, North Carolina judges have the mandate to divide property in a way that is fair, which does not always mean equal. David spent 15 years building a career, contributing to a 401k, and paying down a mortgage on a home that has tripled in value. His wife, Elena, stayed home for 8 years to raise their 2 children before returning to work part-time. In the eyes of the court in 2026, Elena's non-monetary contributions to the household are given significant weight. When David runs the numbers, he realizes that fair might mean Elena receives 60% of the marital assets to compensate for her lower earning potential and her years away from the professional ladder. Imagine if your bank account was suddenly subjected to a subjective audit by a third party who has only known you for 3 hours. That's the reality of the divorce economy. The first major blow is the liquidation of the primary residence. In the 2026 housing market, with interest rates still hovering at levels that make new mortgages daunting, the family home becomes a toxic asset. If David wants to keep the house to provide stability for his children, he must buy out Elena's equity. But to do that, he has to refinance the entire property at 2026 rates, nearly doubling his monthly payment. If they choose to sell, they are hit with broker fees, closing costs, and potentially capital gains taxes that eat 10 to 15% of their net worth before a single dollar reaches their separate accounts. Case studies from the last 2 years show that many American families are losing their middle-class status precisely at this juncture, because they can no longer afford to maintain 2 separate households in the same zip code. This leads us to the hidden drain of the QDRO, or the Qualified Domestic Relations Order. Most Americans view their retirement accounts as untouchable until age 65. However, in a divorce, these accounts are often the largest liquidatable assets. To split a 401k or a 403b without triggering immediate tax penalties and early withdrawal fees, a specialized legal document called a QDRO must be drafted. In 2026, the administrative cost for these orders has skyrocketed due to increased complexity in corporate benefits packages. Furthermore, David has to face the reality of market volatility. If the market dips during the 6 months it takes to process the divorce, the value of the portion he eventually receives could be significantly lower than the amount agreed upon during mediation. Historical trends indicate that divorced individuals over 45 have approximately 50% less wealth at retirement than their married counterparts, a gap that is rarely closed in the remaining working years. Then there is the matter of alimony, now frequently referred to as spousal support. In 2026, the trend has shifted away from permanent alimony toward rehabilitative support, designed to get the lower-earning spouse back on their feet. However, the calculation is still based on the standard of living established during the marriage. If David and Elena lived a high-consumption lifestyle, private schools, luxury vehicles, and international travel, the court may order David to pay a monthly sum that ensures Elena can maintain a semblance of that life for a set period. This creates a scenario where David is essentially paying for a ghost lifestyle, while struggling to fund his new, smaller reality. We are seeing a surge in nomadic divorcees in 2026, professionals who are forced to move to lower-cost states just to keep up with support payments while maintaining their own basic needs. We must also address the divorce industrial complex. In a high-stakes demographic like 2026 America, a divorce is rarely just 2 people and 2 lawyers. It is a parade of billable hours. Forensic accountants are now standard in middle to upper-class divorces to track down digital assets, including cryptocurrency holdings and offshore gaming accounts that didn't exist in previous decades. In David's case, the discovery process alone, the legal term for finding all the money, costs $20,000. Then come the vocational experts to testify about Elena's earning capacity, the real estate appraisers to argue over the home's value, and the child custody evaluators who charge by the hour to observe the family dynamic. By the time the final decree is signed, David and Elena have spent nearly 15% of their total net worth just to decide how to split the remaining 85%. For many viewers, the most shocking part of the 2026 Divorce Now trend is the child support algorithm. Most states now use a refined income shares model. This isn't a flat fee. It is a complex calculation that accounts for health insurance premiums, extracurricular activities, and even the cost of high-speed internet required for schoolwork. As inflation has driven up the cost of basic goods, child support tiers have been adjusted upward. A parent in 2026 might find that after taxes, spousal support, and child support, they are left with less than 30% of their gross income to cover their own rent, food, and transportation. This is why we are seeing a massive increase in multi-generational living among divorced men in their 30s and 40s. They are literally moving back in with their parents because the divorce economy has rendered them insolvent. The potential outcomes for children in this economic shift are also being re-evaluated. In the past, child support ended at 18. In 2026, we are seeing more marital settlement agreements that include mandatory contributions to college funds or even postgraduate support, reflecting the reality that young adults can no longer achieve independence at 18. This locks the divorcing parents into a financial partnership that lasts decades longer than the marriage itself. You might be divorced in the eyes of the law, but you are financially tethered to your ex-spouse for a significant portion of your adult life. This financial fragmentation is changing the very map of America. We are seeing the rise of the divorce colony, suburbs or apartment complexes that are almost exclusively populated by single-parent households or individuals in the middle of a split. These areas are characterized by high turnover and a shift in local economies, with a higher demand for childcare services, convenience dining, and mental health facilities. The Divorce Now trend is essentially a massive redistribution of wealth from the family unit to the service economy. As we look at the wreckage of the family balance sheet, a deeper and more concerning question begins to emerge. If the financial cost is so devastating, and the path to recovery is so long, why are millions of Americans still choosing to hit the exit button in record numbers? Is there a psychological shift that has made the loss of wealth seem like a small price to pay for something else? In the next part, we are going to dive into the social contagion of divorce. We will explore how your social circle, your workplace, and even your digital algorithm might be subtly nudging you toward the exit. We will look at the data that shows divorce is actually contagious within friend groups, and how the 2026 culture of radical self-interest is rewriting the rules of human loyalty. If you think your marriage is immune to outside influence, you are ignoring the most powerful demographic force of our time. The psychological breakdown of the American household is next, and it is more calculated than you think. The psychological reality of the 2026 American household is that it no longer exists in a vacuum. Your marriage is not a private contract between two people. It is a node in a vast, interconnected social and digital network. To understand why the Divorce Now trend is accelerating, we have to look at the concept of social contagion. Research from institutions like Brown University and the University of California, San Diego, has highlighted a phenomenon that is reaching its peak in 2026: divorces clusters. If a close friend gets divorced, the likelihood of your own marriage ending increases by 75%. Even if it is a friend of a friend, the risk remains significantly elevated. This is not because people are actively trying to sabotage their friends, but because human beings are mimetic. We look to our peers to define what is acceptable, what is possible, and what is desirable. Consider the case of Amanda, a 38-year-old pediatric nurse living in the suburbs of Chicago. In 2026, Amanda had been married to her husband, Jason, for 12 years. Their marriage was not bad by traditional standards. It was functional, stable, and predictable. However, within an 18-month window, 3 women in Amanda's immediate social circle filed for divorce. Amanda watched their transitions through a high-definition lens. She saw the initial chaos, yes, but she also saw the subsequent glow-up. She saw her friends reclaiming their fitness, re-entering the dating pool with the wisdom of experience, and most importantly, she saw them radiating a sense of relief. In a historical context, these women would have been viewed with pity or concern. In 2026, they are viewed as pioneers of a new life. This social contagion creates a psychological tipping point. When Amanda experiences a common marital frustration, perhaps a disagreement over household labor or a lack of emotional intimacy, she no longer views it as a challenge to be weathered. Instead, she compares it to the perceived freedom of her newly single friends. The threshold for what constitutes an intolerable marriage has lowered because the social price of leaving has vanished. In the 2026 demographic, the collective identity of the friend group has shifted from the brunching couples to the empowered singles. For Amanda, staying married starts to feel like being the last person left at a party that everyone else has already moved on from. This effect is amplified by the 2026 digital ecosystem. We are currently living in the era of the exit algorithm. If you have ever searched for marital advice, looked up a therapist, or even spent too much time lingering on a video about self-actualization, your social media feeds will begin to curate a very specific reality for you. In 2026, the rise of the divorce influencer has become a dominant force in U.S. digital demographics. These are creators who document their journey from the doldrums of a stale marriage to a vibrant, solo life. They use highly polished aesthetics to frame divorce not as a tragedy, but as a luxury lifestyle upgrade. When someone like Amanda scrolls through her feed, she is bombarded with the narrative of radical self-interest. The messaging is clear. You owe it to yourself to be happy, and if your partner is not facilitating your highest self, they are an obstacle to your evolution. We must also analyze the impact of the workplace on this psychological breakdown. In 2026, the boundary between professional ambition and personal life has completely dissolved. The modern U.S. corporate culture, especially in high-growth sectors, demands a level of focus and flexibility that is often incompatible with the compromise required for a long-term marriage. Case studies from the Silicon Valley and New York financial sectors show a trend where high-performing individuals view their spouses as a legacy system, a part of their old life that no longer scales with their new professional identity. When an individual is receiving constant validation and ego strokes at the office, the mundane realities of a marriage, the chores, the bills, the repetitive conversations, can feel like a psychological drain. The workplace becomes the primary source of identity, making the domestic sphere seem secondary or even regressive. Imagine a scenario where a professional in 2026 is offered a major promotion that requires moving to a different coast. In a companionate marriage model, the couple would decide together based on the family unit's needs. In the individualized marriage model of 2026, the individual often views the career opportunity as a non-negotiable part of their self-actualization. If the spouse cannot or will not adapt, the divorce now mindset kicks in. This is not seen as a failure of love, but as a necessary step in career optimization. The potential outcomes of this shift are a more mobile, highly productive workforce, but one that is increasingly untethered from the stabilizing force of a lifelong partner. Furthermore, we are seeing a massive shift in how therapy culture is applied to modern demographics. While mental health awareness is objectively a positive development, in 2026, we are observing the rise of what sociologists call therapeutic narcissism. This is the tendency to use psychological language to justify the abandonment of commitments. Terms like boundaries, toxic, and emotional labor are frequently weaponized to frame the normal friction of a long-term relationship as a violation of one's mental health. When every disagreement is labeled as a red flag and every compromise is seen as an erasure of self, the structural integrity of the marriage begins to rot from the inside out. In 2026, many Americans are more committed to their therapeutic narrative than they are to their marital partner. This leads to the death of endurance as a virtue. For most of human history, the ability to stay through the hard times was considered a mark of character. In 2026, endurance is often reframed as a lack of self-respect. We have moved from a culture of repair to a culture of replacement. If your phone breaks, you get a new one. If your job is stressful, you quiet quit. If your marriage requires hard, unglamorous work, you divorce now. This mindset is particularly prevalent among those who reached adulthood in the age of instant gratification. The idea that a marriage might have seasons of winter that last years is alien to a demographic that expects a high-speed connection in every aspect of life. The consequence of this psychological shift is a demographic of people who are more autonomous, but also more isolated. In 2026, we are seeing record levels of reported loneliness despite the increase in self-reported happiness post-divorce. It is the great paradox of the modern U.S. demographic. We are breaking the bonds that restrict us, only to find that those bonds were also the that anchored us. As Amanda in Chicago navigates her new life, she finds that while she is no longer annoyed by Jason's habits, she also lacks a primary witness to her life. The social contagion led her to the exit, but it didn't provide a map for the terrain on the other side. Every step of this psychological erosion, from the influence of the friend group to the curation of the digital algorithm, is a calculated part of a larger sociological shift. We are witnessing the final triumph of the individual over the institution. But this triumph has a shadow side that most influencers won't tell you about. It is the impact on the most vulnerable members of this demographic experiment, the children. As the adults pivot toward self-actualization, the landscape of American childhood is being fundamentally terraformed. In the next part, we are going to dive into the data on the 2026 parenting revolution. We will examine the rise of the birdnesting trend, the psychological impact of the two-household childhood, and how the divorce now movement is creating a generation that views commitment as a high-risk gamble. If you think the kids are alright, you are only looking at the surface. The generational fallout is about to begin. When we talk about the generational fallout of the 2026 divorce now trend, we have to look at the experimental nature of parenting in a high-tech, high-cost society. For the children of this era, the white picket fence hasn't just been moved. It has been duplicated, fragmented, and in some cases, turned into a rotating satellite. To understand the gravity of this shift, we must analyze the rise of a phenomenon that has moved from a niche celebrity trend to a standard middle-class strategy in the United States: birdnesting. Imagine a 10-year-old named Leo living in a quiet suburb of Denver, Colorado, in 2026. Leo's parents, Marcus and Chloe, decided to end their marriage 6 months ago. However, instead of Leo packing a suitcase every Sunday night to trek across town to a new apartment, Leo stays exactly where he is. He keeps his room, his desk, his gaming setup, and his neighborhood friends. It is Marcus and Chloe who are the nomads. They have rented a small one-bedroom efficiency apartment 5 miles away. When it is Marcus's week with Leo, Chloe moves into the efficiency apartment, and Marcus moves back into the family nest. When the week is over, they swap. This is the birdnesting model, and in 2026, it is being touted by many family therapists as the ultimate way to mitigate the trauma of divorce. But as we look at the data coming out of the first half of this year, the potential outcomes are far more complex than the brochures suggest. From a demographic standpoint, birdnesting is an economic juggernaut. Marcus and Chloe are now funding 3 separate living spaces on 2 incomes that were already stretched by the 2026 cost of living. Historical trends in American real estate show that the family home was the primary engine of wealth. In a birdnesting scenario, that engine is idling. The equity is frozen because neither parent can sell without upending the child's stability. This creates a generation of children who are raised in a frozen environment, where the financial growth of their parents is sacrificed for a semblance of continuity. The psychological data on children like Leo is equally revealing. While birdnesting prevents the physical disruption of moving, it often creates a state of psychological suspension. Case studies from 2026 suggest that children in these environments often struggle to grasp the reality of the divorce. Because the house remains the same, the permanence of the split feels like a temporary glitch rather than a fundamental change. This can lead to a prolonged period of the fantasy of reconciliation, which sociologists argue can be more damaging than the clean break of the past. Furthermore, the logistical stress on parents like Marcus and Chloe is immense. They are constantly moving their lives in and out of suitcases, living in a space that still smells like their ex-partner, and managing the maintenance of a home they no longer share. When the parents are perpetually exhausted and financially drained, the quality of their parenting inevitably fluctuates. Beyond the birdnesting trend, we must examine the digital management of the 2026 split family. The demographic of children raised in this era is the first to be fully integrated into the co-parenting app economy. Every interaction between Marcus and Chloe, every doctor's appointment for Leo, and every soccer practice is logged in a centralized digital ledger. While this reduces face-to-face conflict, it introduces a level of surveillance and rigidity that was unknown to previous generations. Leo's life is governed by a shared calendar that he can access on his own device. He knows exactly which parent is responsible for him at any given hour. This creates a generation of children who are hyper-aware of logistics, scheduling, and the transactional nature of time. They aren't just children. They are junior administrators of their own lives. This brings us to the concept of the commitment gamble. As Leo watches his parents navigate their optimized exit, he is receiving a masterclass in the fragility of the social contract. In the 1980s, a child of divorce might have seen it as a rare catastrophe. In 2026, Leo sees it as a common, almost inevitable stage of the adult life cycle. This is fundamentally altering how the next generation views long-term commitment. We are seeing a shift in the values of American teenagers who now rank career stability and financial independence significantly higher than marriage or family formation. To them, marriage is not a foundation. It is a high-risk investment with a high probability of liquidation. The data from the 2026 National Survey of Family Growth suggests that young adults who grew up in the divorce now era are delaying their own first marriages at record rates. They are not necessarily avoiding relationships, but they are approaching them with a level of skepticism that borders on clinical. They are the generation of the pre-commitment audit. Before they even consider cohabitation, they are looking at asset protection and exit strategies. They have seen the financial and emotional wreckage of the birdnesting experiment, and they are choosing to opt out of the system entirely rather than risk the fallout. We also have to consider the educational and career trajectories of these children. Historical trends indicated that divorce often led to a decline in educational attainment, primarily due to the sudden drop in household income. In 2026, the divorce now trend is hitting the middle and upper middle classes the hardest, meaning these children often stay in high-performing school districts, but their future security is eroded. The college fund that Marcus and Chloe had been building for Leo is often the first thing to be repurposed to cover the legal fees or the rent on that third residence. We are seeing a demographic shift where the children of the divorce now era are entering adulthood with higher levels of student debt because their parents' wealth was consumed by the mechanics of the split. This is a redistribution of the American future. We are trading the generational transfer of wealth for the immediate self-actualization of the parents. While the parents may feel more fulfilled and less trapped, the children are essentially inheriting a more volatile world with fewer safety nets. The step-by-step details of this shift are visible in every urban center in the U.S., where the demand for tutoring services and child mental health facilities is at an all-time high. The 2026 demographic is one that is paying a high premium for resilience. As we look at the face of the American family in 2026, we see a portrait that is increasingly abstract. It is a collection of individuals who happen to share a history and a digital calendar, but whose primary loyalty is to their own personal trajectory. The children are the quiet observers of this revolution. They are learning that love is conditional, that stability is a luxury, and that the only person you can truly count on is yourself. This is the psychological foundation upon which the next 50 years of American society will be built. But there is an even darker side to this demographic shift that nobody wants to discuss at the dinner table. It involves the way our legal and corporate structures are actually incentivizing this behavior. There are hidden forces at play that make divorce not just an emotional choice, but a tactical one in the face of 2020 SAX's unique economic pressures. In the next part, we are going to expose the corporate divorce incentive. We will look at how modern insurance models, corporate benefit packages, and even the way we handle taxes are making it more profitable for some couples to be apart than together. We are going to go inside the boardrooms and the legislative offices to see how the divorce now trend was, in many ways, designed. If you think this was all about personal choice, you are only seeing half the map. The institutional push toward the exit is our next deep dive. When we examine the institutional framework of 2026, we discover that the divorce now trend is not just a collection of personal tragedies or triumphs of self-actualization. It is increasingly a calculated response to a system that has, in many ways, made singlehood more economically viable than marriage. To understand this institutional push, we have to look at a phenomenon that is becoming a standard strategy for the American middle class: the strategic medical divorce. Consider the case of Thomas and Janet, a couple in their late 50s living in Columbus, Ohio. Thomas was diagnosed in early 2025 with a chronic, degenerative condition that requires 24-hour care and expensive specialized treatments, not fully covered by their primary insurance. In the economic landscape of 2026, Thomas and Janet faced a brutal reality. Their combined assets, including a modest home, a shared savings account, and Janet's 401k, placed them just above the threshold for many state-funded assistance programs. If they stayed married, they would be required to spend down nearly every cent of their life savings before qualifying for the long-term care Thomas needs. By the time Thomas passed away, Janet would be left in her 60s with zero assets and no home. In a move that is becoming a major demographic marker in 2026, they filed for a no-fault divorce. This was not because they stopped loving each other, but because the legal separation allowed Janet to retain the family home and her retirement accounts as her separate property, while Thomas, now an individual with limited assets, could qualify for the specialized care programs necessary for his survival. This is a demographic of necessity, where the state's eligibility requirements for healthcare act as a direct incentive for the dissolution of the marital unit. Historical trends in healthcare costs have long suggested this breaking point, but in 2026, it has become a formalized tactical maneuver. Beyond the healthcare crisis, we must analyze the corporate mobility incentive. Imagine a senior project manager named Kevin working for a major logistics firm in Charlotte. In the corporate culture of 2026, high-growth companies prioritize what they call agile talent. When a company looks to expand into a new market, say a secondary tech hub in the Midwest, they look for employees who can relocate with minimal friction. Internal HR data from 2026 case studies reveals a subtle but pervasive bias. A single employee, or one who is divorced and sharing custody, is often viewed as more mobile than a married employee whose spouse has a competing career. Corporations are increasingly offering relocation packages that are optimized for individuals. Think luxury studio stipends and digital nomad credits, while the cost of moving a traditional family of 4 has become a logistical and financial hurdle that companies are less willing to jump. For someone like Kevin, the potential outcomes of staying in a marriage that is already under strain might include being passed over for the very promotions that define his self-worth. In this environment, the career path itself begins to signal that the exit is the most efficient route to professional advancement. We also have to talk about the 2026 tax paradox. For decades, the U.S. tax code was seen as a way to encourage marriage through joint filing. However, following the major revenue adjustments of 2025 and 2026, the marriage penalty has returned with a vengeance for dual-income professional couples. Let's look at a scenario involving 2 high earners in Seattle. As a married couple filing jointly, their combined income pushes them into a significantly higher bracket where they lose access to various deductions and are hit with specific surtaxes designed to fund infrastructure projects. If they were to divorce and file as single or head of household, their individual tax liabilities would drop, and they could strategically assign certain deductions, like mortgage interest or dependents, to the partner who benefits most. In a world where every percentage point of income matters, some couples are looking at a $10,000 to $15,000 annual tax savings just by changing their legal status. When you add that up over a decade, the divorce isn't just an emotional decision. It is a major financial windfall. The internal revenue landscape of 2026 has effectively placed a price tag on the marriage certificate, and for many that price has become too high to justify. Furthermore, we must examine the Social Security mechanics of the 2026 retiree. This is particularly relevant for the gray divorce demographic. There is a specific rule in the Social Security system that acts as a demographic trigger: the 10-year rule. If a marriage lasts at least 10 years, a divorced spouse is entitled to claim benefits based on their ex-spouse's earnings record, provided they remain unmarried. For a woman like Martha, who may have spent years out of the workforce, reaching that 10-year mark is a significant financial milestone. In 2026, we are seeing a spike in divorce filings among couples who have been married for exactly 10 or 11 years. Once that threshold is crossed, the lower-earning spouse has a guaranteed safety net that they can carry with them, regardless of the other person's future actions. This creates a sweet spot for exit. The state has essentially guaranteed the financial viability of the divorce once the decade-long contract has been served. This is a step-by-step calculation being made by thousands of Americans who view the 10-year mark as their graduation day from an unhappy union. The rise of the 1099 economy, or the gig economy, has also stripped away the social glue that once held marriages together. In the historical trends of the 20th century, the corporation was a social community. There were company picnics, holiday parties for spouses, and a general expectation that the employee's family was part of the corporate identity. In 2026, with over half of the U.S. workforce operating as contractors or freelancers, that social layer has evaporated. The 1099 worker is an economic island. There are no spousal benefits to consider, no social pressure from the boss's wife, and no communal expectation of stability. When your work life is a series of short-term contracts, you begin to view your personal life through the same lens. The lack of institutional support for the family unit in the modern workplace has made the divorce now trend feel like a natural extension of the freelance lifestyle. You are your own brand, your own CEO, and your own primary beneficiary. Every one of these factors, the medical eligibility, the tax brackets, the corporate mobility, and the Social Security rules, serves to lower the barrier to entry for the divorce courts. We are living in an era where the institutions that were once the pillars of the American family have been redesigned to serve the individual. The potential outcomes of this institutional shift are a more fluid, more productive, and more taxable population of individuals, but at the cost of the stable multi-generational household. The state and the corporation have realized that two single people consuming two sets of goods, paying two rents, and requiring two sets of services are far more profitable for the economy than one married couple sharing everything. As we look at these cold, hard facts, we have to ask, who is actually profiting from the split? If the individual is losing their wealth and the family is losing its core, where is that money and energy going? There is a massive sector of the U.S. economy that is not just surviving but thriving on the back of the divorce now trend. In the next part, we are going to dive into the billion-dollar divorce industry. We will look at how the 2026 economy has created a cycle of consumption that relies on the constant breaking and remaking of households. From the surge in solo living real estate to the rise of the luxury litigation market, we are going to follow the money. If you thought the lawyers were the only ones getting rich, you are only scratching the surface. The economic engines behind your breakup are more powerful than you can imagine, and they are just getting started. To understand the economic engine of the 2026 divorce now trend, we have to look past the mahogany desks of family law firms and into the very fabric of the American retail and real estate sectors. There is a phenomenon that economists are beginning to call the split multiplier effect. In the 2026 U.S. economy, a single household fracturing into two doesn't just create emotional ripple effects. It creates a massive, forced surge in consumer spending that is keeping entire sectors of the economy afloat. When a couple in their 40s like Tyler and Megan in Atlanta decide to uncouple, the immediate requirement is the duplication of a life. This is not a choice. It is a logistical necessity that carries a heavy price tag. Imagine Tyler as he stands in a warehouse club store 3 weeks after moving into his new 2-bedroom apartment. In his previous life, he shared a single toaster, one high-end vacuum cleaner, a full set of cookware, and a comprehensive toolkit. Now, to function as a co-parent in 2026, Tyler must purchase a second version of every single item required to maintain a middle-class standard of living. This is the kitchen appliance tax. Retail data from the first quarter of 2026 indicates a significant spike in small appliance and home goods sales in zip codes with high divorce filing rates. From air fryers to lawnmowers, the divorce now trend is essentially a forced stimulus package for big box retailers. For every 10,000 divorces, we are seeing the creation of 10,000 new kitchens, 10,000 new living rooms, and 10,000 new laundry suites. This duplication extends into the digital realm as well. In 2026, the subscription economy has become so fragmented that a split household often leads to a doubling of monthly recurring revenue for streaming services, cloud storage, and security monitoring. Tyler and Megan can no longer share a family plan if they are no longer a family unit under one roof. The potential outcomes of this shift are a higher cost of living for both individuals, but a higher profit margin for the corporations providing these essential 2026 services. Case studies from the telecom industry show that uncoupling is one of the primary drivers of new account creation, often surpassing the growth generated by young adults leaving their parents' homes. Now, let us look at the most significant driver of the billion-dollar divorce industry, the real estate pivot. In 2026, the U.S. housing market has adapted to the divorce now trend by shifting toward a new asset class, known as the uncoupled residential suite. Developers in cities like Austin, Denver, and Charlotte are no longer just building massive 5-bedroom suburban homes. They are pivoting toward high-density, luxury 2-bedroom units specifically designed for the co-parenting demographic. These units often feature split-wing floor plans to give children privacy and dual-master suites for the revolving-door lifestyle of the modern divorcee. Historical trends in the 2010s focused on the tiny house or the studio apartment for the young professional. But in 2026, the money is in the midlife transition. This is the divorce apartment. These complexes are designed with 2026 sensibilities, offering on-site mediation rooms, shared supervised visitation spaces, and high-security child transfer zones. The investment in these properties is astronomical. Private equity firms are pouring billions into build-to-rent communities that specifically target the newly single parent. They know that this demographic is a captive audience. They need to be in a specific school district for their kids, but they no longer have the dual income to support a massive mortgage. By providing a high-end rental alternative, the real estate industry is capturing the equity that was liquidated during the divorce settlement. The third pillar of this industry is the divorce glow-up economy. In 2026, the psychological impact of entering the dating pool after 15 or 20 years has fueled a massive surge in the aesthetic and wellness sectors. We are observing a demographic shift where the first purchase made after a divorce decree is often not a new car, but a comprehensive self-optimization package. This includes everything from high-end gym memberships and personal branding consultants to the rise of post-separation plastic surgery. Data from the American Society of Plastic Surgeons in early 2026 shows a record-breaking number of procedures being performed on men and women in the 45 to 60 age bracket, specifically citing life transitions as the primary motivator. The re-entry market is a calculated industry. Dating apps have evolved in 2026 to offer premium tiers specifically for divorcees, featuring AI-driven profile builders that scrape your old family photos to generate solo versions of you in exotic locations. There are specialized travel agencies that cater exclusively to the newly single, offering recovery retreats in the Caribbean or adventure tours in Patagonia, designed to facilitate the transition from we to me. This isn't just about fun. It is a billion-dollar machine designed to monetize the vulnerability of the newly uncoupled. Then we have the rise of dispute tech. In 2026, the legal industry has been disrupted by AI-driven mediation platforms that charge a fraction of what a lawyer costs but still generate massive revenue through volume. These platforms use historical trends and localized case law to predict the potential outcomes of a trial, nudging couples toward a settlement that the algorithm deems fair. While this might seem like a service, these platforms often have affiliate relationships with credit repair services, moving companies, and financial planners. The moment you log into a divorce app in 2026, your data is sold to an ecosystem of vendors who know exactly what you need before you do. You are marketed a new bed, a new therapist, and a new life insurance policy, all within the same user session. Case studies of high net worth individuals in 2026 reveal an even more specialized sector: the forensic digital auditor. As wealth becomes increasingly digital, the process of hiding assets has moved into the realm of encrypted wallets and decentralized finance. The divorce industry has responded with a new class of professional who uses advanced blockchain analytics to track down every Satoshi and every fractional share of a virtual real estate plot. These auditors charge upwards of $500 an hour, and in the Divorce Now era, they are booked months in advance. The economic reality is that in 2026, a stable marriage is a low-velocity financial unit. A married couple tends to save more, consume more efficiently, and interact less with the transactional economy. A divorcing couple, however, is a high-velocity unit. They are liquidating assets, paying fees, buying new goods, and seeking new services at a feverish pace. The 2026 U.S. GDP is, in no small part, being bolstered by the destruction of the nuclear family. Every time a household splits, the gears of the economy turn a little faster. But as the money flows and the developers build their new towers, a quiet, almost invisible shift is happening in the background. While millions are choosing the exit, a different demographic is emerging, one that is watching this billion-dollar industry and deciding to rewrite the rules of partnership before they ever sign a marriage license. In the next part, we are going to explore the rise of the beta marriage and the situationship demographic. We will look at how the 2026 youth are moving toward a world of non-binding domesticity, and why the very concept of a legal marriage might be becoming an obsolete luxury. If you think the Divorce Now trend is the end of the story, you are wrong. It is just the catalyst for a much weirder, much more fluid future. The death of the marriage license as we know it is our next deep dive. The death of the marriage license as a primary social requirement is not a sudden collapse, but a calculated retreat by the youngest members of the American workforce. To see this in action, we have to look at Jordan, a 26-year-old systems analyst living in Philadelphia in 2026. Jordan has been in a committed relationship for 4 years. Yet the idea of a traditional marriage license is viewed not as a romantic milestone, but as a high-risk legal liability. In Jordan's social circle, the trending concept is the beta marriage or the renewable contract. This is a demographic shift where the potential outcomes of a lifelong union are weighed against the historical trends of the divorce economy we have just analyzed. For Jordan and his partner, the state-issued license is an archaic piece of software that is no longer compatible with their 2026 hardware. The beta marriage is a step-by-step reimagining of domesticity. Imagine if, instead of a till death do us part vow, you signed a 5-year domestic term sheet. At the end of those 5 years, the contract simply expires unless both parties actively choose to renew it. There is no court filing, no contested assets, and no forensic accounting. In 2026, we are seeing the rise of private lifestyle agreements that exist entirely outside the family court system. Jordan's agreement, drafted by a new class of contract consultants, specifies exactly how common expenses are split, who retains the lease on their apartment if they part ways, and even how their shared digital subscriptions and pets are managed. By removing the state's role in the union, this demographic is attempting to bypass the divorce now trend by ensuring that a split is a private administrative task, rather than a public legal war. This movement is fueled by the rise of the situationship as a permanent demographic category. In decades past, a situationship was a temporary, often confusing stage between dating and commitment. In 2026, it has been formalized. This is a demographic of millions of Americans who live together, share lives, and sometimes even raise children, but who explicitly refuse to use labels that trigger legal or social expectations. The data from the 2026 National Bureau of Economic Research indicates that this group is the fastest-growing segment of the U.S. housing market. They are the primary drivers of the dual master suite rentals we discussed earlier. They want the companionship of a partner without the institutional weight that makes the divorce now exit so devastating. For them, the lack of a marriage license is their ultimate insurance policy. But we must look deeper into the most radical iteration of this trend: platonic parenting. In 2026, the decoupling of romance from child-rearing has reached the mainstream. Consider a case study involving Chloe and Sam, two professionals in Chicago who decided they both wanted to be parents but had no interest in being a romantic couple. They entered into a co-parenting contract, a legal document that mirrors a business partnership agreement, more than a marriage certificate. They purchased a duplex where they each have their own independent living quarters, sharing a common middle ground for their child. This demographic is responding to the historical trends of divorce by preemptively separating the household. They have looked at the data and concluded that the traditional nuclear family is too fragile for the 2026 economy. By starting with the split household model, they believe they can provide more stability for a child than a couple that might eventually go through a high-conflict divorce. This shift is creating a massive headache for the U.S. government. The entire American tax, insurance, and social safety net system is built on the assumption of the married couple as the basic unit of society. In 2026, as more people like Jordan and Chloe opt for these non-traditional structures, we are seeing the emergence of domestic partnerships 2.0. Some forward-thinking corporations are already beginning to offer family benefits to these non-romantic partners, recognizing that their talent pool is increasingly uncoupled. However, the legal protections of marriage, such as spousal privilege in court or automatic inheritance rights, are being lost in the process. This creates a demographic of individuals who are incredibly agile and low liability, but also socially and legally vulnerable in ways we haven't seen since the early 19th century. The potential outcomes for the 2026 economy are profound. If the marriage license dies, the divorce industry dies with it, but it is replaced by the contract industry. We are seeing a boom in boutique legal firms that specialize in uncoupled mediation and private domestic arbitration. They are creating a shadow legal system that operates faster and more efficiently than the state-run courts. For the individual, this means more autonomy. For society, it means the end of the shared moral and legal framework that once defined the American community. We are moving toward a world of private, bespoke relationships where the rules are whatever you can negotiate in a term sheet. Furthermore, we must examine the impact of the subscription model of everything on these demographic choices. In 2026, the average American subscribes to their car, their furniture, and their software. Why should their partner be any different? The psychological shift toward temporary, high-value experiences is colliding with the reality of human longevity. As we discussed in the Silver Tsunami segment, people are living longer and changing more throughout their lives. The 2026 demographic views the idea of a single partner for 60 years as a mathematical improbability. They are choosing instead a sequence of high-intensity, short-duration partnerships that reflect their current stage of personal and professional development. Imagine a world where your social status is no longer tied to being married, but to the quality of your contracts. In 2026, the status symbol isn't the diamond ring. It is the clean, equitable, and professional nature of your domestic exit. We are seeing a generation that values transparency over tradition. They would rather have an honest 3-year contract that ends with a handshake than a 30-year marriage that ends in a deposition. This is the ultimate evolution of the divorce now trend. It has become so normalized that it is being built into the very beginning of the relationship. We are witnessing the birth of the pre-divorce society. As this fragmentation continues, it raises a terrifying question about the future of the American social fabric. If every household is a private contract, and every relationship is a temporary subscription, what happens to the concept of the collective good? Who takes care of the individuals who can no longer negotiate a high-value contract? We are seeing the rise of a new class of social outcasts, the uncontracted. In the next part, we are going to explore the lonely century at its peak. We will look at the demographic of the perpetual single, and how the 2026 economy is struggling to deal with a population that has successfully uncoupled, but has no one left to turn to. We are going to look at the health data, the loneliness epidemic, and the terrifying cost of total autonomy. If you think the divorce now trend ends with a happy solo life, the statistics on what happens next will haunt you. The reality of the isolated individual is our next deep dive. The silence of a post-divorce apartment in 2026 is a sound that historical trends never fully prepared us for. While the first 6 months of a split are often characterized by a surge in adrenaline and the dopamine of a fresh start, the 24-month mark is where the demographic reality of the isolated individual truly sets in. To understand the gravity of this, we must look at the case of Mark, a 52-year-old civil engineer in Indianapolis. Mark followed the divorce now trend in 2024, believing that the potential outcomes of a solo life would lead to higher personal satisfaction and less daily friction. By 2026, Mark has achieved that autonomy, but he has also entered what the U.S. Surgeon General has termed the loneliness epidemic's peak. In 2026, the health data for the divorce demographic is staggering. We are observing a direct correlation between the dissolution of long-term marriages and a decline in physical health metrics that rivals the impact of chronic smoking. For individuals like Mark, the loss of the primary witness is the most devastating psychological blow. In sociology, the primary witness is the person who notices the subtle shifts in your health, your mood, and your daily habits. Without a spouse, there is no one to notice that Mark's cough has lingered for 3 weeks, or that his sleep patterns have become erratic. Historical trends show that married men, in particular, live longer because their spouses act as a de facto healthcare manager. In the 2026 demographic of the uncoupled, we are seeing a spike in preventable health crises simply because there is no one in the home to provide that first line of observation. The economic cost of this isolation is what we call the single tax of 2026. Imagine if every bill in your life was suddenly increased by 40% without any change in your service. That is the reality for the divorced individual. When Mark lived with his wife, they shared the high fixed costs of a 2026 lifestyle. The $500 a month high-speed satellite internet, the skyrocketing property taxes, and the bulk purchasing power at warehouse clubs. As a single man, Mark's cost per calorie and cost per square foot have nearly doubled. The 2026 food industry has pivoted to cater to this demographic with single-serve packaging that is, by weight, significantly more expensive than family-sized equivalents. Mark is paying a premium for his independence in every aisle of the grocery store. Step by step, the financial erosion of the isolated individual happens not in one large event, but in the thousands of tiny transactions that are no longer subsidized by a partner. Furthermore, we must analyze the friendship recession of 2026. This is a specific demographic phenomenon where divorced individuals, particularly men over 45, find their social circles have evaporated. In the United States, social calendars are historically curated by women. When Mark divorced, he didn't just lose a wife. He lost the infrastructure of his social life. The couple friends he spent 15 years with have largely drifted toward his ex-wife, or have distanced themselves to avoid the awkwardness of taking sides. In 2026, the rise of remote work has exacerbated this. Mark no longer has a physical office to provide incidental social contact. His interactions are almost entirely transactional. The delivery driver, the barista, and the automated voice of his car's navigation system. This creates a psychological state known as hyperautonomy. While Mark is free to do whatever he wants, he is finding that without the friction of a partner's needs, his own life feels increasingly weightless. There is no one to disagree with, but there is also no one to share a triumph with. This has led to a massive surge in the 2026 market for parasocial relationships. We are seeing record numbers of divorced individuals spending 3 to 5 hours a day engaged with streamers, podcasters, or AI-driven companions. These digital entities provide a simulation of intimacy that masks the structural loneliness of their lives. But case studies show that these digital substitutes actually increase the feeling of isolation because they provide no physical safety net. If Mark were to fall in his kitchen today, his AI companion could not help him, and his digital community might not even notice his absence for days. The care gap for the aging divorce demographic is the looming crisis of the late 2020s. Historical trends indicate that as the baby boomer and Gen X cohorts age, They will require a level of domestic support that the U.S. healthcare system is not equipped to provide. In a traditional demographic model, this care is provided by a spouse or children. But in the divorce now era, the spouse is gone, and the children, like Leo from our previous case study, are often living hundreds of miles away, struggling with their own economic precarity. Mark is looking at a future where his elder care will be entirely institutionalized and incredibly expensive. The wealth he thought he was protecting by divorcing is now being earmarked for professional caregivers who will replace the unpaid labor a spouse once provided. We must also consider the impact of the 2026 urban solitude. Cities like Seattle and New York are being redesigned for this uncoupled demographic, with more micro-apartments and co-living spaces. But these architectural shifts are creating a demographic of the perpetual nomad. Without a family unit to anchor them to a neighborhood, divorced individuals are moving more frequently, chasing lower rents or better amenities. This constant churn prevents the formation of deep community ties. Mark has lived in his current building for a year, and he does not know the name of a single neighbor. He lives in a high-density environment that is, paradoxically, a social desert. The potential outcomes of this mass isolation are already manifesting in the 2026 political and social landscape. An isolated demographic is more susceptible to radicalization and more prone to extreme consumerist behavior, as a way to fill the emotional void. Mark's spending on high-end gadgets and solo travel is a demographic attempt to buy back the fulfillment that used to come from communal living. But the data suggests that this is a temporary fix. The plateau of the solo lifestyle is real, and for many it is a cold, lonely place. As we look at Mark sitting in his perfectly curated, high-tech and completely silent living room, we have to realize that the divorce now trend has achieved its goal, total individual freedom. But it has also achieved its consequence, total individual responsibility. In a world that is becoming more complex and more expensive by the day, the burden of being a single-person unit is becoming unsustainable. We are seeing the limits of the individualistic experiment. But what if there is a way to see where all of this is heading? If the traditional family is dead, and the isolated individual is struggling, what is the next iteration of the American demographic? We are at the final stage of our deep dive. In the concluding part of this masterclass, we are going to synthesize everything we have learned. We will look at the 2027 forecasts and the radical new models of connection that are emerging from the wreckage of the divorce now era. We will answer the ultimate question. Is the American family truly gone? Or is it just evolving into something we don't yet recognize? The final chapter of the divorce now trend is about to be written, and the conclusion will change the way you plan the rest of your life. Stay tuned because the final piece of the puzzle is next. The final piece of the puzzle is the realization that the divorce now trend is not an end point, but a transitional phase toward a radical new form of American social architecture. As we stand in the midpoint of 2026, the data indicates that the era of the isolated individual we just explored is already triggering a countermovement. Humans are biologically incapable of sustained isolation without a decline in cognitive and physical function, and the American demographic is beginning to self-correct through a phenomenon called the microtribe reconstitution. To understand where this is going, we have to look at Elena, whom we met earlier during her split from David. By late 2026, Elena has moved past the initial shock of her equitable distribution settlement and has entered a new living arrangement that is becoming the gold standard for the post-divorce demographic. Elena did not seek a new husband. Instead, she joined forces with two other divorced women in her professional circle to form an intentional domestic unit. They did not just move in together. They drafted a private equity residential contract. They pooled their remaining assets to purchase a large, subdivided property in a high-demand school district. This is not a return to the communal living of the 1960s. This is a highly technical, legally binding economic merger. In 2026, these microtribes are the fastest-growing residential demographic in urban centers like Charlotte and Austin. They are creating a new form of household that possesses the scale of a traditional family, but the flexibility of a modern corporation. Elena's new household has 3 separate bedroom suites, a shared professional-grade kitchen, and a centralized childcare hub. The potential outcomes of this model include a reduction in individual living costs by nearly 40% and a massive increase in shared psychological safety. Historical trends show that whenever the nuclear family unit has come under extreme pressure, alternative kinship structures emerge to fill the void. In 2026, we are seeing the formalization of the chosen family as a legal entity. New legislative proposals in several U.S. states are looking to expand the definition of a domestic partnership to include multi-adult, non-romantic households for the purposes of health insurance, property taxes, and inheritance. This is the next stage of the divorce now trend. We are moving from a society of couples to a society of individualists, and now, finally, to a society of strategic alliances. For Elena, this means she has a primary witness to her life without the legal and emotional fragility of a romantic marriage. If she falls ill, her contract partners are legally obligated to provide a specific tier of care, as outlined in their domestic term sheet. We must also analyze the 2027 forecasts for the AI-driven compatibility market. In the previous parts, we discussed how tech was driving people apart. Now, in late 2026, we are seeing the rise of the stability algorithm. This is a new class of digital tool designed not to find you a soulmate, but to find you an economically and temperamentally compatible lifestyle partner. Imagine a platform that analyzes your financial history, your domestic habits, your parenting philosophy, and your career trajectory to match you with others looking to form a micro-tribe. Studies from early adopters in the Pacific Northwest show that these algorithmically matched non-romantic households have a significantly lower dissolution rate than traditional marriages. The 2026 demographic is prioritizing logistical alignment over romantic spark, viewing the former as a more durable foundation for the high-volatility world they inhabit. This leads to the total reconfiguration of American wealth management. In the post-divorce era, we are seeing the rise of the fractional inheritance model. Instead of wealth passing down through a single linear bloodline, it is being distributed across these new intentional units. Elena's children are growing up in a household with 3 adult mentors and 3 distinct sets of resources. This is a step-by-step deconstruction of the traditional inheritance trap that often left children of divorce in financial limbo. By diversifying the household's adult members, these microtribes are creating a more resilient economic environment for the next generation. Historical trends in the U.S. are pivoting away from the single-owner model toward a shared-use, shared equity model in every aspect of life, from cars to homes to families. Furthermore, we must address the 2026 corporate response to the alliance demographic. Major employers are beginning to realize that the isolated individual is a high-risk employee due to burnout and health issues. Consequently, we are seeing a shift in benefit packages that allow employees to designate their intentional unit members as beneficiaries. This institutional validation is the final nail in the coffin for the traditional marriage license's monopoly on social stability. When the corporation and the state recognize the chosen tribe as equal to the biological family, the incentive to enter into a traditional marriage decreases even further. The divorce now trend was the demolition phase. The 2027 reconstitution is the building phase of a more modular American society. As we conclude this deep dive, we have to look at the total demographic map of the United States. We see a country that has been fundamentally transformed. The white picket fence has been replaced by the high-security, multi-unit dwelling. The lifelong vow has been replaced by the renewable service level agreement. The single breadwinner has been replaced by the diversified domestic board of directors. For the individual, the potential outcomes of this shift are a greater sense of agency and a lower risk of total financial ruin. For the nation, the outcome is a more complex, less predictable, but perhaps more resilient social fabric. But there is one final, haunting question that remains. As we move into this world of optimized, contractual, and modular relationships, what happens to the concept of unconditional love? In a society where every domestic interaction is a line item in a contract, is there still room for the messy, irrational, and deeply human sacrifices that once defined the American home? Or have we simply traded one form of entrapment for another? A world where you are never truly alone but never truly committed? The data of 2026 can tell us how many people are leaving their marriages and how much it costs to buy a new refrigerator, but it cannot yet measure the long-term impact on the American soul. We are the first generation to conduct this experiment at scale. We are the architects of the post-family era, and we are building the house as we live in it. The trends we have analyzed, the gray divorce, the millennial pivot, the bird nesting, the strategic medical separation, are all just chapters in a much larger story about the search for security in an insecure world. If you are currently navigating this landscape, know that you are not just a statistic in a demographic report. You are a participant in a historical shift that will be studied for centuries. The decisions you make about your assets, your living situation, and your loyalty are the bricks and mortar of the new American reality. We have moved past the era of the divorce now trend and into the era of the permanent pivot. Your ability to adapt, to negotiate, and to build your own tribe will be the defining skill of the next decade. This concludes our masterclass on modern U.S. demographics, but the story is far from over. As we move into 2027, the first results of the microtribe experiment will begin to emerge. Will these new intentional families hold together when the next economic shock hits? Or are we just creating a more sophisticated way to fail? The next demographic frontier is not how we fall apart, but how we choose to stay together when the old rules no longer apply. The data is already shifting, and the next deep dive into the rise of the synthetic community is already being prepared. If you want to understand how the 2027 elections will be decided by this new uncoupled voting bloc, or how the healthcare system will collapse under the weight of the isolated aging population, you need to be ready for what comes next. The American landscape has been terraformed, and the new world is just beginning to take shape. Stay alert, stay informed, and stay ready for the next shift. We will see you in the next deep dive.